How is everyone? Did everyone get a chance to watch the 100th episode last night, or were you there for it, or watch the VOD, something of that sort?
Get it! Good girl! Yay! Squeak, 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 everybody! Kiri would like you all to know that she's feeling better. Good girl, good squeak. So there you go. Squeak! Sploosh squeaks, yeah. Oh, my back is killing me today. If my back really has a bad spasm during this, I'm gonna have to run and get my meds. Anne is gonna be ramrod straight today, guys. Yes, the squeak. So she squeaked last night, and David was like, Kiri, you're feeling better. It was awesome. David, not a dog person before we moved in. Now, seriously, a Kiri person. So I don't think you could live with Kiri without being a fan, though. Right, Kir? Yeah. She's like, I'm in a squeaking mood. So yeah, after, boy, it's almost been 2 weeks of Kiri being sick. Wow, it's a long time. But yes, we finally have the squeaks again. So you can all be happy. Let's pirate. I felt like pirating today. I thought about doing rocks with the Sphinx. And I was like, yeah, I've been wanting to kind of work out where I want some cream colors on her. Because I think it's purple and cream is largely where I want to go. I haven't decided if I'm going to toss some teal in there. Or some green. Or some orange or something. Well, not orange because cream. So let me get her in focus. So color schemes. Let's talk about color schemes. Why not? Happy Friday, everybody. I hope you're gonna enjoy your Friday. Oh, good. Yeah, I wasn't sure if this figure was still available or what. I mean, if the 4,000. There is another pirate figure. There's at least a couple. There's a couple of really good pirate figures. So all of the stuff I do on this one is applicable across the board. So just to remind you guys that we started out with our Bones colors. Eldritch Purple and Icy Violet. And then I was working with Rosy Skin. Which we had to do some glazes to make it more rosy since I was silly and didn't start with a white undercoat. But the rosy skin is the primary color of her skin tone. And then I know I'm gonna get some gold trim in here and there because gold and purple, it's a natural choice. But for my off, I kind of wanted to do some stuff in off-white since she's supposed to be kind of a good guy pirate. Oh, yes, you have a lot. That makes sense, PM. It's good to see you also, PM Mandercar. I believe that I have not seen you chat for a while. But I remember you from long ago. At least I think I remember you from long ago. If you're new, then I don't. And it's just my brain playing tricks on me, which is, me. So yeah. So I hear the giveaway 100 things thing went really well yesterday. Did you guys have fun? Hey, Beard, how's it going? It's good to see you. It's good to see everybody today. Kiri's in a good mood. We got Kiri Squeaky Ball. So she's actually feeling much better. Oh, thanks, Vakaroha with a party of 4. Hi, everybody. We're about to start painting pirates. We're just going to talk about color schemes and what accent colors I want to use, and kind of a pause here, kind of to figure out where I'm going. I do see some armor on this leg, so we're gonna have to figure out if that's leather, and it probably would be. Metal armor would be kind of questionable on the high seas. Her boots almost have to be black leather because pirate. So maybe black. You want to alternate your leather usually. Yes, good morning. So we're talking about pirate. This is for those who are new. If Vakaroha's people are not used to me, I am Anne. I work for Reaper. I created their Reaper Master Series paint line up until the point where I moved to the West Coast earlier this year. And now I do the show for them because I was a staff painter before I was a paint line designer. So we are talking about Ms. Fairweather. And that's right. I was going to think about her hair color too, wasn't I? Because I believe in the art she's blonde, but I didn't really want to do that because I wanted to go cream colored with some of these accents. Yellow and cream don't go. Cream is a good neutral for almost anything. It'll go with almost anything, except for yellow because they're just too close. They're just really, really close. So they tend to clash a little bit because cream is kind of a muted out yellow, brownish yellow. Oh, good. Then you got it. So if I'm going to go blonde with her hair, then I run into problems essentially with this edging on her coat. Whereas if I go brunette with her hair, I think it would go well. I think it would go really well with the purple, a nice warm brunette, and then like more of a rich brown. Hey Max Styles, how's it going? And then we can go cream with parts of this. And the problem here, and this is the glory and the evil of Izzy's art, right? Which is what this pirate is based on. There are so many layers of clothing. So I really am looking at the shirt underneath, and I may need to reach for a color that will work with that. And my question is, am I going to go with a green or a teal? I mean, teal is the classic, right? But I'm almost hesitant to go with a teal because we've already shifted toward blue here. I may want to go with like a pale green or something. That might work. So this is how I think about this, guys. So we're going to talk some color theory. Oh, yay. It's a color theory day. It's Friday. Why not? Let me grab a Surf Aqua. There it is. That's not bad. So we could... Purple and teal is the great classic color combo that has existed almost since the dawn of miniature painting. So the teal that I'm looking at is Surf Aqua. I also could look at Phantom Glow, which is more green. The greener you go, the farther you go from this Icy Violet highlight, which is very blue. So when I say farther you go, what I'm talking about is the color wheel. You remember the color wheel. So when colors are close to each other on the color wheel, they don't like each other as much. And when they're farther apart, they tend to like each other more. So the complementary colors are opposite each other, right? The red and green and orange and blue and all that stuff. But when you have a color that's clashing, it's usually because you're trying to use colors that are too close to each other. And that's what I was just talking about with blonde hair and cream. If I look for a cream color somewhere on my... There we go. So if I look for a creamish color on my color wheel, then, you know, I can see that colors next to it, like the yellow is essentially is right there. So if I go for a blonde hair, it's going to fight because they're just like, they're too close. Either they're going to fight or they're going to blend into each other and you're not going to be able to tell the hair from the collar. So yeah, exactly. Well, there were 1,000 people watching, JT. So it's like you had 1 in 10 odds. And don't worry, there's always more giveaways. Reaper Live is very famous for Ed giving away the entire company on occasion. So don't worry, this won't be the only time, I'm sure. But yeah, so when I'm looking at these colors, like this Icy Violet is actually a blue violet, so it's right there. So I can probably find a color that looks really close to it. Yeah, in fact, it's pretty much a perfect match. So adding white, see, this is your color wheel. You can move this circle here. Comes with blue, and it's almost a perfect match there. It's a little bit more blue. It's kind of halfway between these. It's a blue-violet. So we know where this is on the color wheel. And that means we kind of know, like, you know, and the purple is right here. So this works to highlight this because they're close together. So when you're trying to shade or highlight something, it can work together better if they are closer on the color wheel. If you're trying to take a reddish violet to violet, which is our eldritch purple, is kind of halfway between these guys right here, and we're trying to highlight it with this, it works decently because it's not too far away. It still looks a little bit weird, but it works, right? You can mix them and not get any really weird color shifts. So my obvious, if I'm working with stuff that's up here, then when I go across the color wheel, what I get is a yellow-green, a yellow, and a yellow-orange. That's kind of where our compositionally, our opposites are. So, but there's also triadic. So here we go. Let me go to the back of the color wheel. So your complementary colors, right? You guys know that, red and green, stuff like that. That's this strong black arrow right down the middle here. And when you, here, let me back up so you guys can actually see the whole thing. There we go. So looking at this, right? But then you've also got what here is a triad. And that, if we line that up with red here, you want to line the primary arrow up, then you get red, blue, yellow. So you guys know the primary color triad, red, yellow, blue, right? And then green, orange, purple. So, but you can also go halfway on that. So let's say blue, violet here, or straight up violet, gives you the green there. If we want to go all the way to teal, so technically if a triadic was working, we'd get red violet, which we actually did start with. We could go to a teal, but according to this, we probably want to go greener on our teal. And the other color is like a yellow orange. So yellow orange can be like NMM gold, or it could be a brownish cream, a really warm cream. Yeah, color wheel sighting, drink. Actually, it doesn't happen that often, so you wouldn't get very tipsy. Oh yeah, this window, a lot of people do it actually. I think Scale 75 actually paid to license a version of this. But this is actually done by the Color Wheel Company, and it is the Pocket Color Wheel. If you type Pocket Color Wheel into Amazon, it will give you this handy little small one. That's, I think, is only like $1.99 or something. Yeah, it's on Amazon. They're just useful. They're useful. Every once in a while, if I'm not sure on a color combo, I will double check. Because although some of this stuff may seem simple, you can do an awful lot with trying to match your color. Like, say I was using like redstone. If you add red to green, you end up with a very redstone color. So you can kind of use that and kind of draw your triangle and say, okay, so, there's that. Now if I'm adding all these other things, I can essentially start with some of these colors and extrapolate where I want to go from there. But this is the useful part for creating colors, if you don't want to get into color quandary. And what I want you to notice here, guys, is that except for the split complementary, which can be really difficult to make work because the colors are close together. But except for split complementary, everything is far apart. Like you're going with there, and there. Or you're going directly across the color wheel. Or if you're doing a tetrad, you're going here. You're working, again, in opposition. Things on this side of the color wheel and things on this side of the color wheel. If you're doing a straight up square, which is the tetrad, you're going equidistant all around the color wheel. But you're still trying to do things that are far apart. The reason the split complementary is so difficult is that two of the colors are very, very close to each other. So here, when we're working with yellow-orange, we've got blue and we've got violet. So blue and purple. You can make that work. It's just your blue and your violet better be far enough apart. It's the same thing with the color that usually is the color combo that's really hard to do is usually a blue and green. They like to fight with each other a lot, especially if one of your blues is kind of teal or your green is kind of teal. They tend to not like each other much at all. So this is the hardest one as far as colors go. With our pirate, I'm not going there. Although if you look at it very cleverly, we actually do have a split complementary going here with our highlight on our purple. Our purple started with a kind of a red violet to violet, so that's one point of the split complementary. And then we highlighted it with a blue violet. Remember? Blue violet plus white. That's our icy violet. So we actually are using a split complementary scheme just dealing with our highlights because I'm already talking about using cream, which would be a muted yellow, as kind of a complementary. So if we go that way and we don't introduce any other strong colors, we'll be using a split complementary color scheme. Now, the other way I could do this, and I think I might go there, is to use Icy Violet, because you guys wanted me to, and to use Icy Violet for the shirt, like pure Icy Violet here for the shirt. I think we're going to try that, because I do want a light color, and I do want contrast, and I still want to do that cream. So if I go this way, it'll be, the shirt will automatically work with the hat and coat, because it's highlighted with the same dang color, but it should be different enough. Zero. Yes. Honestly, color wheel, just make sure your colors are far enough apart. And when I say far enough apart, if you are going to use colors that are next to each other on the color wheel, like you're painting a mermaid and you really want to use a teal and a blue next to each other, then you have to push them apart a different way. You have to push them apart then by making one light and one dark, or at least one light and one midtone, or one midtone and one dark. You have to have a significant light-dark difference if you're not going to push them apart on the color wheel. So let's try mocking in this shirt and see. And it's going to look very monochrome because that's all we've got, is the skin tone and the icy violet and the purple right now. But we're going to see if icy violet straight up works for this shirt. And it should, like I said, because it's in the highlights on the purple, it should work great. Now, my one concern here, and I think I am going to do what I didn't do on the shirt. Remember, because I zenith primed this model, we have a base coat that's really black in a lot of areas, including the shirt. It has a lot of black in it. I'm not sure how this icy violet is going to play on that. So I'm actually going to do a little bit of underpainting first. And whenever you're going to go with a light color over a black primer, it will make your life easier to lay down a thinned white layer first. Yeah, Kaji, it's because the color wheel is really useful. And really though, if you just remember that you want things to be more different, not more similar, that will carry you far in miniature painting. So whenever you've got a color that's next to each other on the color wheel, or you're looking at using two colors that are really close to each other, take one really dark. Like if you're looking at it, say, oh, well, I should probably use the shadow of this triad then with this other midtone, or I should use the highlight with this other midtone, so that they're different. They need to be different. Colors that are too close to each other clash, especially if one is muted and one is bright. So that's another rule, but we'll get to that we've talked about that in other streams. So let's try, this is kind of a safe choice since I'm already using the icy violet for highlighting. I'm going to mix up some pure white. I'm going to mix it about 1:1, so it is quite thin, but being pure white, it will still cover like a demon. At least, more than you would think it would, being 1:1 with water. I really only need a little bit. I don't need a solid white coat underneath this, although you certainly could do it. Yes, a lot. Yeah, there is. She's got it. Yes. That is Izzy's artwork. Izzy is a brilliant costume designer. She's our staff artist at Reaper and has been since I started. She was working at Reaper as a staff concept artist before I even came to Reaper, and I've worked for Reaper for 17 years, Beard. So that gives you an idea how long Izzy's been with the company and how long her art has been influencing our miniatures. But because she's a costume designer, she really does, she knows all the layers that you would have worn in a given period, and she extrapolates from history a lot. And so, yeah, you definitely have a shirt on under your jacket, and then you've got corsetry, if you're female, in the Renaissance period. And then you've got your belt to hold your coat together, and to hang your stuff from, because you don't want to hang them from your corset. That's just plain corsets are uncomfortable enough. Let's just face it. And corsets don't have little hooks to hang things from. So you have to wear a belt. So then you got your stuff hanging from all your belts, and you've got all your layers that you need. And then you've got your pants, and then you've got your armor, just in case you fall into the water and you wanted to repel sharks with your knees, because that's a thing. But yeah, so Izzy goes very high detail, which is cool, but it means that you have to give a little bit of thought to color and your color choices and how many colors you're using. And that means with me that I tend to go slow. So I knew I wanted this purple for the coat. I knew I wanted to do purple. You guys chose the icy violet, so I worked with that. Did the skin tone because I thought the rosy skin would match well with the purple, and it does. But now it's time to start extrapolating. So I will go step by step in order not to paint myself into too much of a color corner. So I'm going to take this thinned white, and you can see how thin it is. It's not real solid on the brush here. If I draw a line, though, you can see it's a pretty solid line. What I love about pure white is that you can thin it down and utilize it in a lot of different ways. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to be doing a bit of underpainting. So I want to keep the shadow between the corset and this shirt, the top of this shirt. But I also want a little bit of white underneath this icy violet layer that I'm about to put down. And I have no idea why she has snaps on her shirt, but I'm just like, whatever. I'm going to just go trust Izzy's fashion sense and just go. But she does actually have a couple of buttons or snaps or something out here on the side. So what this does is it means that when I put on this icy violet, the color's going to be a lot stronger. If I try to put on icy violet over even this kind of mist of white over the black, it's really going to dull down the color, just like the skin tones started out very dull when we put them over the black. John David, I use probably a 50-50 mix. I want to say I've been using a lot of bones because I feel it's kind of the best work I've done in paint design. But I mean, you can see I'm still using Surf Aqua. I still reach for things like walnut brown, my pure white as a core, rosy skin as a core color. All of the skin tones that I use are core, except for our African skin tones. The ebony flesh and ruddy flesh And then I guess I do use the Scholar Flesh and sometimes the Pale Flesh. But for any of our like just middle range, run of the mill kind of Caucasian skin tones, I always reach for tan skin or rosy skin. Sometimes I use olive skin or bronze skin shadow. So I reach a lot of skin tones that I use are in core. And as far as like some of the yellows, like our NMM Gold Triad, that's a core color. Whereas, the other yellow that I use for mixing is a bones color. The ivory that I'm going to be using, creamy ivory, is a core color. And like cyan blue. And I use the clear brights all the time. So yeah, I would say it's a 50-50. Yeah, I would say it is 50-50. I love a lot of the colors in bones because they're not very common. And also some of them, like the rich leather, are just so useful for so many things. And I swear I'll get that PDF out to you guys. Man, with Kiri being sick, it totally ripped, like, cooking her, like, special meals and everything is, like, sucked up so much time in addition to all the other stuff I do. But I promise you'll get your $5 PDF, and it will be talking about the weird bones browns. So we're going to talk about rich leather, polished leather, nut brown, and saddle brown. And I'm almost done with it. I just have to do a set of swatches. But I've just been working so hard on other things. So don't worry, it'll get there. Zero's Theory, I timed myself years ago, and I really come in around 10 to 12 hours on a normal model. This one, because of all the details, could take me 12 to 15, depends. But that was years ago, and I have gotten a little faster. So, I mean, it really depends usually how many different colors I'm working with. So I'm going to put some Icy Violet over this now. Icy Violet actually does cover pretty well. I'm not getting a lot of color from it because it is so pale. And this is a problem that you'll hit, guys, if when you're working with a color that's light colored, even if it's pretty vibrant like that. Oh, there we go. Now the Icy Violet's coming through a little better. But if you're working with a light color and you're putting it on a small area, it may just look like a light color. Like it may gray out or kind of bleach out, and you may not see the color very strong. And that's just because it's a pale color, and on a small area, you won't see it very much. Whereas if you put a pale color on a big area, like if we had done this entire coat in Icy Violet, you could see that color no problem because it's taking up a lot of area. But light colors tend to not read very well. Here, let's just put this over this and see what I can do. Tend to not read very well over small areas. Ash, I could do a tabletop miniature in like 2 to 3 hours. The thing is that I tend not to do tabletop. Like, I want my tabletop even to be kind of nice. So yeah, maybe 3 hours. It depends on, if it's a monster, it tends to be very fast, right? Because monsters tend to be pretty simple. But I mean, you've seen the amount of time I'm spending on the Sphinx, although she's definitely above tabletop level. Now, notice what I did here, guys. I put a layer of our Icy Violet over our Zenith Prime, and it actually did work. I put an extra layer over the white part so that it's seen, but we did keep our shadows here. I have to kind of question myself now as to how I'm going to shade this Icy Violet. It is reading definitely as violet now next to the coat. I know I can highlight it by just adding white, but what do I shade it with is the question. So I've got two options, and this is, again, going to be about color. So the closest thing we've got to a blue violet, a blue violet, in the shadow department is Ultramarine Shadow, which is an extremely gorgeous color. And if you don't have it, you really should get it. It's a beautiful dark ultramarine. It's just gorgeous. Ultramarine, for those who don't know, shifts toward violet, and other blues I don't know. Well, it's stuff, artist colors. There's a lot of blues that tend to shift toward green, but ultramarine shifts the other way. So this would be a good call if we were doing the traditional American miniature painter thing, which is to choose a darker version of the color for the shadow and a lighter version of the color for the highlight. That, however, is not how shadows work in nature. If you think about it, they really don't. You don't get a blue shirt that then becomes a bright blue shadow, right? Although artistically you can go there and it looks cool. And a lot of us start out by doing that. But we can also just add a little bit of a neutral color into our color to make a natural shadow. So what I tend to use is walnut brown. It has a tiny bit of oxide browns in it that make it not a black. You'd never want to use, I don't think you'd want to use a pure black. But what I have found through experimentation is that walnut makes a very realistic shadow when mixed with almost anything. It is very odd. But, yeah, I mean, for me, I want to be happy with the results. I don't care if I'm painting for gaming or painting for anything. Thanks, Inara. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'd have to take some work in progress photos, but I could certainly put up a bonus if I have time. I don't know if I'll have time this month. I've got so much to catch up on because of Kiri. Kiri really put me back. Her, you know how it is when one of your pups or animals is sick. And it's been 2 weeks she's chopped out. You're worried and you're not working as intensively and you're keeping an eye on her. And I've been cooking her special meals so that her gut will, calm down. So I feel like I'm really behind. So probably not this month. But perhaps I'll take a photo after I do my work today on her so I can get some work in progress shots. And I'll think about doing some color talk, like a little short PDF on some of this stuff. So let's see. So that was 4 drops Icy Violet to 1 drop Walnut. Now Walnut is really strong and Icy Violet is not very strong. So, but it does work. And if I drop a couple more, I think I'm going to drop a couple more big globs of Icy Violet in there. I do want it to be darker. But now I've got this dark violet color. It still has a lot of, because there's so much black in walnut, it still has a lot of gray in it. But it does have a purplish undertone. I'll have to see. It does look a lot like the Icy Violet that laid over the black primer. So that encourages me. I can also do just some kind of some spot blends with this and see. I'm going to thin it down a little because that's going to cut the darkness of it. So a couple drops of water thrown in there. I actually had a brush full of water thrown in there earlier as well. Now I'm also going to do kind of as a test just to see, I'm going to do kind of a spot blend between these two. That might be better. So see that color? That might be a little bit better. But it does look like a natural shadow. So that's what I like about, yeah, and that's closer, I think, to this shadow. Oh boy, did I get white all over myself? I think I got white all over myself. 1 second. Must clean up. These things do happen. Paint emergency. Not really a paint emergency. I just think I actually accidentally probably dipped my hand in my white paint. Or my brush handle, or my something or other. And then it attacked. Paint attack, snooze at 10. All right. So I'm going to grab a little bit of this mixture. So really I needed a lot less walnut. With light colors, this makes sense. And I'm going to try to paint that in to a shadow here. And get us just a really subtle, now that you can see that color, I'm going to move it back. I'm actually going to go for my dark one. Because actually that didn't make as much contrast as I would like. Now remember, I want this surface to look icy violet. So however much shadow I slather on down here, I'm going to have to make sure that most of the area comes back as icy violet. Let's see, let me get my dark color. I want to put a little bit of this dark violet up here as well. Now what am I doing here? I'm covering over the black primer that was that was coming through from the zenith. I don't really want the black primer to show through. I want it to be a guide as to where. I noticed because it got under my fingers on my brush and it felt weird. John David, I don't like wet palettes, but I have forced myself to use them on the stream. They don't play well to my strengths. Wet palettes are good if you like thicker paint and like fatter brushes and larger brushes. Like if you're doing a lot of painting in that style, then wet palette's going to be great. I actually mocked out the first part of Mr. Troll here. Like all of his head and like his chest and everything, I actually did with the wet palette. And then as we've gone further on him, I have come out and done the remainder of stuff with a regular palette. Because the problem with the wet palette is that your paint doesn't stay at a consistent level of thinness. The minute you put water and paint on a wet palette, the water wants to wick down into the sponge. Or if you put paint down, the water wicks up into the paint. Because that's the point. It's osmosis, right? But that means that if you want to get your paint at a very precise level for like saying doing smooth layering or stuff, which I do all the time, or for doing like textures or controlled underpainting or anything like that. Hey there, Smosh Sam. How's it going? Yeah, the troll is fab. Yeah, I really like him. He's a dramatic light scheme here. Well, let's actually go back here. Boom, boom. So this is a guy. This is the rock troll. He's I think he's the first Bones model we ever did. I've got his card up here somewhere. Okay, so if you guys like him, this is his number. He's the first Bones Black. He's one of the second Bones Black. This is actually, it's the same thing we've got on our coat, guys. The crystals are Eldritch Purple mixed with white. They are shaded with a color that's going to come out on the Kickstarter. So if you haven't bought the paint from the Kickstarter yet, go and buy the Indigo Triad because I used black indigo to shade it. So it's actually the same color, and you can see it now. See it? Same color as her hat and coat. I like Eldritch Purple, can you tell? But yeah, so there's Troll. He's got a dramatic light source, so you can see that I'm keeping a lot of him in shadow, and the light is coming from above and falling down this side of his body more than it is down the other. So we're creating an artificial shadow. So yeah, there you go. So that's Rock Troll. We'll go back to him. I go back to him periodically on this stream because I do really like him and I do want to finish him. We'll get close again. All right. Oh, great. Yeah, all the new paints in the Kickstarter, I think those were almost the last thing I did at Reaper, guys, and I love them. I hope they're going to be really, really useful for you. All right, so there's a little bit of this shirt up through here. It's going to be a lot in shadow. But yeah, to go back to wet palettes, the reason that that I don't like them is that they change your paint consistency. So if I wanted to mix my white here that I'm using for underpainting, you know, it's a 1-to-1 paint to water, I couldn't keep it at that consistency on a wet palette. It would inevitably change. The water would go down into the sponge, or more water would come up and change my paint consistency. Chances are it would go down into the sponge unless you're working with a really, really wet palette. I've worked with wet palettes. I learned to use them. I learned what they were good at, which is thick paint, big brushes. If you're keeping your paint at a very thick consistency and you're just mixing more transitions, they're very good for that. If you want to speed paint with a lot of spot blending and mixing, they're very good for that. But if you want to do precision work with thinner paint, they are not so good for that because you end up hand mixing every brush full of paint. And unless you've got a really good intuitive knowledge of what consistency you need, which a lot of people who work with wet palettes and do really good work, they do have that. They have that gut level understanding of how to mix exactly what they need. But if you're new, it's really hard. So keep that in mind. Always try both palettes. And if you're working with any paint that you're adding a lot of water to, highly recommend you use the well palette. It's especially if you use big paint puddles like mine, where I'm mixing quite large puddles, it's going to keep your paint at the right consistency for longer. You don't want to use tiny little paint puddles with these. You always want to use at least 4 to 6 drops of paint. I used to regularly use 8. And you want some water in that, you know, and that will keep your paint pretty well for a while. So like I've got 4 drops of walnut here. I'm going to add 2 drops of water because I want to use it for lining. So that's a 6 drop. That's the minimum I would do. And actually I'll even add a little more water when I put my brush in there. So it's probably 7 drops. And 7 drops is about right. It's going to keep my paint at this consistency for a good long time, probably at least 45 minutes while I work. And then as I'm working with it, if I notice it's getting a little tacky, I just add a little bit more water with my brush. So it really depends. If you get distracted a lot, if you're doing a lot, like I said, of gradual blending up highlights, or you're doing fast painting where you're working like quick and dirty with thick paint, or you're doing oh dear, boop. If you're doing a lot of very close to each other transitions with thicker paint instead of doing thinner transitions, then the wet palette may be your baby. Oh yeah, Jen, totally. That's the point. Because if you're using this sort of palette, you want to be putting water in your paint, because if you put water in your paint, it's going to stay wet longer, right? And most paint, even if you're looking for a base coat, if you do like 6 drops of paint and 1 drop of water, it's not gonna interfere with your coverage. It's gonna make your paint flow better off your brush, and it's gonna make it go on the miniature smoother. So yes, absolutely always thin your paint. Miniatures paints are made to be thinned. In fact, ours is made to be thinned to the level where it has flow improvers added to it. So you don't even have to add anything to it other than water. So I'm going to kind of bring in some of that icy violet. But you guys see how it's hard to see the color because it's in such small areas. And bring back some of my icy violet into this area. I do want to make sure I'm keeping the color. Just want to keep a couple of the folds there. And that gave me that walnut, even though those colors don't look like they match, that did give me a very natural shadow for this color. So overall, I am pleased at my choice. I use walnut a lot like that now. If we used the ultramarine, it would be a much more vibrant shadow. And there are painters that do that, and it looks beautiful. Sergio tends to use a lot of saturated shadows. Sergio Calvo Rubio, who's a Spanish painter, gave a class at Reaper. He's a fantastic guy, and that's something he does. Michael Proctor, who you guys all know from Crow's Nest, Michael tends to use a lot of saturated colors in his shadows. It gives you a very distinctive style. I tend to go more natural, and that's why I like this walnut trick. So that is giving us a shirt color, and you can see that it is the color there, but it's not going to clash with anything. Hey there, DM. How's it going? Yeah, one thing that's nice about this is now I'll remember this color scheme pretty easily because I can just remember that I used this highlight for the shirt, so that's pretty awesome. Now down here where these vials of things, probably potion vials are, it's really hard to get any color in there. Like, it's all deep in shadow. Like, the primer is black there to signal that it's in shadow. So I'm probably going to paint it all with this walnut mixed with the icy violet. The edging on this shirt is going to be a different color, probably gold or cream. So I'm not really going to be able to use my straight up icy violet here. There's just not any room. It's kind of covered. I mean, it's there. It's sculpted underneath it because Bobby's a pro, but there's no room really to suggest a color that isn't a shadow down between these potion vials. So I'm probably just going to darken it in and make it really dark in there. See? That makes the potion vials stand out better anyway. I do have a little spot of highlight still, but the important thing, you always want to think about what's important on the model too, right? So if you're looking at the front of her there, the important thing isn't just a shirt. The more important thing is these potion bottles. Like, that's an interesting detail that you want to pull out. So you don't have to worry about if you can't get, a dot of icy violet back here behind the potion vials. Nobody's really going to be looking there. So if you just make it a dark shadow or use your shadow that we mixed with the walnut, this one, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Nobody's going to begrudge you the fact that they can't see any icy violet back there. It would all be in shadow. I'll try, but even then it might not even look right. See, okay, that's not bad because I lined a little bit around them. If you're going to put that color back there, you'd better do something to make the potion vials stand out against it. So for me, I've got dark shadows on either side, and I need to touch that one up. But yeah, the important details are the ones to sweat. Like, anything that's kind of an afterthought or not as important or not as interesting or under something or behind something, those things you can usually just shade out. Like, you don't have to put a lot of time into them. When you're overthinking something like that, it can freeze you and get you to stop making progress, and that's the enemy of miniature painting. So well, but I do the same thing with Inara. I just put saran wrap over mine. If I put water drops in the wells around the wells I'm using and put saran wrap over the top, it stays up to 3 days. Sometimes I'll open it at 2 and add a little more water and mix them up just to make sure it's going to be okay, because sometimes it doesn't want it. Depends on the ambient temperature and humidity. But I can get these guys to stay like for 3 days. And usually if I'm painting a model and I need those colors, I'm going to be back at it before those 3 days are up. What Rhonda does is even better. She uses a damp sponge to lay on top of her palette, and that keeps all of her paints just, like me, she uses a well palette a lot. So with Rhonda, she also she uses a sponge technique. I like the cling wrap. So it isn't that the well palette does not mean that you can't keep your paint for a few days, is what I'm getting to, I guess. But it's up to you guys. Like I said, if you have a good sense of paint consistency, if you've gotten that gut sense of what you need to get the results that you want with a given technique, you can do it on a wet palette. You can do any technique on either palette, but it's the gut knowledge that you need for that, right? Or you're going to be experimenting a lot. And if you're the type of person who really just loves to experiment, then wet palette may be fine for you. But if you are getting frustrated and you're not sure why you aren't getting blends, or why everything looks chalky, or why, XYZ keep going on, right? Or why there's no coverage, then consider trying a well palette and using like specific mixes of paint to water, until you understand and know what the paint should look like on your brush and coming off your brush. And then you're probably going to get a lot more mileage out of your wet palette. All right, just wanted to shade under that. Wanted to do that. All right, we've got a shirt, everybody. We have a shirt. You can do cheap brushes for base coats for sure. I mean, primer does have slightly more tooth than paint, so I mean there is a chance, I guess, that it would abrade a brush a tiny bit more. I noticed a spot I missed on the coat, so I'm gonna go and fix it. But these days, I don't know. I used to use a different brush for base coating, but these days I just use whatever's to hand, and it doesn't seem to be adversely affecting me. So grabbing some, and again, when I'm mixing my Eldritch Purple, I'm going to do at least 4 drops, and then I'm going to do at least 2 drops of water, and that makes Eldritch Purple pretty much fall to pieces because it's a very transparent paint, so I'm going to drop 2 more drops of Eldritch Purple in there. And don't worry about wasting paint. I say this again and again. We actually counted every bottle of Master Series has, 350 to 400 drops of paint in it. Some have 425. It depends on the viscosity. So you're not going to run out of paint unless you're, if you're painting every day, then maybe you're going to run out of paint faster. But even I who paint every day, it still takes me months to go through a bottle of walnut brown or pure white. So, and I'm just mixing up, stuff every other day if I want to. So do keep in mind that. Don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. Oh, did I get a hair that came out of my brush or wants to? Oh, I think I might have a less. Oh, wait, did it come out? It came out. Okay. I thought I could show you guys brush surgery, but I did that not long ago anyway, so you probably don't need it. I just noticed that I missed the highlight here, so I want to bring it up just a little bit. Up at the top of the coat here. Missed that spot with my Icy Violet before. It got the purple, but it didn't get the highlight. There. That's a little bit better. And then back here we've got only a little bit of ambient highlight. I do want to introduce just a little bit more, but not a lot, because the light on her is definitely coming from the front, and I don't want to get too much reflected light. There would be a little bit, but not too much. So there's just a little bit of reflected light, and it's not going to be nearly as bold as the front light. Oh, Ash, you're going to run out eventually. I mean, okay, if you use it really slow, then it's just going to thicken on you anyway. I mean, it's 400 drops. Even if I used 10, I'd still get 40 days of full wells. I'd get months. Like, what color do I use every day other than pure white? And even with that, it's that's the color I run through the fastest. Even then, it takes me months to go through. So, yeah, I mean, stingy with paint really doesn't make sense. I mean, a bottle is what, $3.29 or whatever, and you're only ever gonna run out of the color that you use all the time. So for me, that's pure white or walnut. Maybe brown liner, but even then, I don't use brown liner on every mini. With all my other paints, even when I'm using that many drops, it takes me years. Literally years. And I think that having to buy, a $3.29 bottle of paint every 6 months, and that's for me. I paint every day. A lot of you don't. Oh, there's a strap there. I need to keep that in mind. So I'm gonna see that little strap, probably holding here. Probably holds the bottom of the dagger. Izzy is very, very tight on attention to detail and what's hanging from what and realism, so you always keep that in mind when you're painting her stuff. Alright, I'm going to try my cream idea. I really want cream and gold, and I want that brown hair. I want dark brown on the belt. I think I want dark brown on the leather armor and on the pants. Kind of looking at it, trying to decide. When you've got a lot of leather together, it can be difficult to figure out what you want to do. Since I'm working with such interesting colors, quote unquote, I almost have to go neutral down here. I really don't want to distract attention from here. This is the important part of the model. You don't really, and the leg details are cool and all, but they don't take priority over anything that's in the upper torso or the face. So, or the gun for that matter. So, though we want to bring out the nicely sculpted details on these boots, we really need to go neutral with them. Traditionally, I do tend to go black with the boots. I could go dark brown in this case, and then go with a lighter brown or cream for the legging. Actually, cream. Cream could work for that legging, but on this side, it's got to be armor. So, All right, let's play. He went through a phase. Yeah, if you use a color on terrain pieces, you're going to have to reorder it because you're using a lot. Exactly. There's just a lot of paint in each of these bottles, and a lot of, if you're not painting every day with the same colors, then if you're doing an army where you're always using the same colors, you're absolutely going to run through several bottles of those of those colors, just because. But you're probably going to get 200 miniatures out of it. It's like you're going to get a lot of minis out of it. All right, boy, so many straps. Yeah, let's go dark brown with the boots. So what I need to do now is I need to kind of block some things in to see how they're going to work. As I said, I'm going slowly. I have a pretty strong idea that I want the collar here to be cream colored, and that I want the feather. I was debating between the edging on the hat and the feather as far as being cream colored, but I think I might go gold with the hat, gold, just like gold braid for the edging, and go cream with the feather, and then the little ribbon badge that she's got on her hat, I can go cream with the little ribbons, and I probably will go gold with the little insignia, which looks like a lion face. Looks like a lion face. I'm going to actually kind of line around it to make it stand out. Putting this dark area around the outside of this little badge is going to bring out the details. Just kind of outlining a cartoon character. You want all the areas to kind of show up. If you think of these little miniatures as cartoon characters, then lining makes perfect sense. And honestly, if you base coated a character and did no shading other than lining, it would still look pretty darn good. It would end up probably looking like Borderlands art. For those familiar with that video game art style. So, lining the outside rim of this hat. If I go a little bit over, it's not a big deal. I just want all of it to stand out. So if I lost my black primer anywhere, I'm going to bring it back in with a line. I like using walnut for lining if I'm looking for a very stark style. If I want a very, very dark solid line. Sometimes I don't. Often I'll use brown liner if I want a more natural line, because brown liner is more translucent and gives a much more naturalistic look. Yeah, chestnut gold, definitely. Guys, and I'll talk about this in my PDF, but polished leather is your chestnut gold simulacrum. I think it needs a drop of white in it to cover better, because it does not have the coverage of chestnut gold, and it might need a tiny bit of try oxide brown when it comes out. Other than that, you could try a little bit of russet or ruddy leather. But it needs a touch more brown and a little bit more coverage to be a good substitute. but the color is close. No, Chestnut Gold was a straight up core color. It was canceled. It was canceled because people didn't understand how useful it was. Much like Stained Ivory was canceled, which I totally blew my mind because that color, so useful. Chestnut Gold, core color, 9073. One of the most useful tans in the line, but it is what it is. Did not sell, now it is gone. Let's see here. All right, let's use black and brown. I might put a drop of russet brown in this just to make it a little lighter. It's a dark chocolate color. It's the mid-tone for the same triad that walnut brown is from. Where's my pokey tool? Pokey tool. I tend to like throw my pokey tool on the floor a lot. It tends to sit near the edge of my desk and my elbow grabs it. Boop, pokey tool. My pokey tool needs cleaning. Yeah, well, that should be good enough. Oh, maybe not. Nope, not good enough, Anne. There was a regular plug in there. Some bases tend to clog a little more than others. There we go. My black and brown is also pretty old, so probably needs a replacement. I think I tell how to mix a sub for Stained Ivory in the PDF this month. I did a lot of work on the PDF this month to kind of... There are a lot of things in my Patreon PDF this month, guys, for $5 tier that talk about replacing or mixing substitutes for a lot of the colors that got canceled. Because it just turns out that the Weird Bones Browns are actually really good for that. For a ton of that. So that's why it's taken me a while. That and Kiri. I blame Kiri. If it's one that I really... Like, they hadn't canceled for many, many years. Not really. Not en masse, John David. I really don't mind for some colors, because there are some colors that really are kind of niche. But when something that I think is kind of integral to the line gets let go, and maybe people just haven't bought it because they don't understand how useful it is, then I get sad. Like, Chestnut Gold is one of those colors. It's not a clear bright, but it actually is only a duo pigment color. And it's so useful for so many things, from leather to like lions and leopards and horses and blonde hair and like NMM, and it's got so many uses. It's just crazy good. And I guess I just didn't sell it enough. There we go. Sorry, I had to take a knife. If you have a problem with your pokey tool getting all dirty, just take a hobby knife and just do light scrapies. And it gets all back to shiny new. Paint will not stand against your hobby knife. All right, so we've got our our black and brown for our dark brown color, but it is really dark, so I think I want to bring it up just a little bit. You want to use, when I'm reaching for neutral browns that work with every color, it's russet brown and black and brown. You will never have a problem with these browns. With not going with something. They go with everything. They are universal. I used to call them helper colors because they help you, give you options. And they tend to make other colors just work better rather than having problems with anybody. They work really, really well. Yeah. Yeah, exactly, Inara. Yeah, chestnut is, gold is a really, really useful color. It is a shame that it is gone. However, like I said, polished leather. Give it a try. Add just a tiny touch of white to it. It'll improve its coverage. Add just a tiny touch of brown to it, and you should get really close to... or if you are using it for shading, like on lions or brown or blonde hair or whatever, then the transparency will actually work for you. Alrighty. Brown boots instead of black this time. I will go against my my habitual black pirate boots. Much as I love doing shiny black boots, as you all know, since I've been doing them on the Duelist. Shiny brown boots can be fun too. And this, I gotta be careful here too, because oh god, there's so many parts to these boots, and there's so many buckles. Darn it, Izzy. But also, this is the color I was going to use for her hair, so I may have to rethink that. I don't want it to be exactly the same. All right, so we got a cuff. I think I'm just going to do it all in brown. You know what? When you freak out, when you get to this point where I just have my slight freak out, and you're like, oh my god, there's too much, I don't know what to do. Just paint it brown, guys, paint it brown. Then worry about it afterwards. Worry about what you're going to do. Because you can always, when you highlight, you can always bring out all these details with shadows and highlights. You don't have to make them a different color. And in a lot of ways, it makes sense not to make them a different color. With boots, you'd often have, the leather, and it would just have different tooling, but it would still be the same leather, more or less. Now, some of this, like this little badge here, this little buckle, the buckle's probably gold or silver. So that's fine. We can keep that in mind. But you can just feel free to coat all of it up front. And this is a very high coverage color, so it is not going to leave any of our zenith showing through. That's fine. I can figure out how to highlight and shade it. And because I'm putting it over black primer, it's even darker. I mean, it's going to be coming off as very dark in its first coat. But you can see how this got a pretty dark chocolate color, isn't it? Oh, this is blackened brown with 1 drop of russet. So I wanted something dark and rich and a little bit reddish, but then I decided it was a little bit too dark. I wanted to brighten it a little. So this is about a 4-to-1 with 4 drops of black and brown, 1 drop of russet. Both of these colors are the most utilitarian dark browns that we have. They go with everything. I don't care what your other color is, they go with it. So remember that and buy the heck out of them, guys, because they really are, they're your helpers. If those go out of the line, boy, we're all screwed. Muddy brown is also very useful, but I've almost always got black and russet up on my thing, so I don't reach for muddy a lot. But muddy is also a useful medium dark brown that works with everything. Yeah, but I decided to do brown shiny boots instead because she's. I'm gonna consider. Part of me does want to do metal on this leg armor. Like, I probably should make it a lighter leather instead of metal, though. Maybe I'll actually use saddle brown or something. Saddle brown is such a weird color. But I think it might work with this. Then I'd want to use it in other places. All right, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try. So when you as you figure out what everything is, you start blocking it in. So okay, if I've got my dark brown leather boots, always repeat your colors around the model. Don't think you need to look for a different leather for every piece of leather. You're within your rights to do it if you want to. I gotta ask myself what this is gonna be. The gun is gonna be it's mostly gonna be brass, I think. The handle would normally have some brown. So I'm going to at least block that in with this same brown. The tooling would be like brass. So I want to make sure that I can get some of these areas and just kind of block them in. So I'm just going to use what I've got. I can always change this color a little bit by highlighting it differently for the wood here as opposed to the boots to make them different. But I want to start blocking in different colors. So I think this belt, this big broad belt, is also going to be that same leather that her boots have. I tend to go minimalist, a little bit minimalist on colors. If I'm going to go, you'll notice I use very few colors primarily on each figure. If I'm going to be clever with color, I tend to use different colors to highlight and shade rather than choosing a bunch of different colors for the figure itself. So I tend to repeat colors very strongly across the face of a figure so that all the figure is kind of pulled together. Because if I'm using this brown here and here and here, and on her hair, then that brown, if it catches your eye, you're going to see it. All these different places evenly spaced across the model, and it's going to make sense to you. And it's going to make the model look good that way. I have lots of lots of minis that I've been doing metal on at Jabberwock. I don't want to do, we've got Duelist. Duelist has a crap ton of metal. I don't want to repeat myself too much. I think I want to maybe work with, a lot of people don't know, how to use saddle brown very well because it's a bit of an odd color, but I think it actually is a good color for this model. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to try saddle brown for the leather on that side. I'm going to try a cream for the other side, or for the other details. So let's start blocking these in. At this point, when I've got my main colors, I can play a little bit to see what goes together with everything else. Now, the problem typically with saddle, it says it's a little bit muted, but we can work with it with shading and highlighting. So let's just do that. Let's choose our secondary leather color. It's a bit lighter. Remember, we use saddle to shade her skin as well. So what are we doing? We're repeating colors. Aren't we clever? So when I say repeating colors, I mean even using something that I maybe mixed into something over here to use by itself over there. Having two different colors of leather on a model is a really good idea, because especially with something like a pirate or a rogue or something that's going to have, or a ranger, it's going to have lots of leather, lots of belts and straps and, you know, and all sorts of stuff that is going to be leather. You can then, you don't end up making everything the same leather colors. You can kind of alternate your leather colors and it'll come off a lot nicer and more interesting. So like for her belts, I'm going to go dark brown on those, but for these little loops and bindings, I might go a different color, and I might go this leather on her bodice if I decide it is leather. Still not sure on the bodice. I mean, still thinking. Gonna continue to think. So I like that, actually, that saddle brown. I'm gonna keep that for now. I can see that it definitely is a little more muted than a lot of my other colors. I am using a lot of vibrant colors on this figure, and saddle brown tends to go better if it's a more muted color scheme. But this icy violet, even though it's a strong color, it is more muted, and it's not fighting with the saddle. So what will make this or break it is going to be how I shade and highlight this color. When you've got a color there, you're like, well, it's okay, but it's not the best. You kind of troubleshoot it, and you try to figure out, okay, what can make it work better. She's getting there. All right, so what I'm going to do for cream, like normally for cream, guys, I would have base coated with a color that is now canceled, stained ivory. We no longer have stained ivory, so we're going to mix it. We're going to mix a similar color. And we're going to do that by using the highlight to it, creamy ivory, which has a lot of the same pigments that stained ivory has. And then we're going to add a drop of some sort of yellowy brown, because if you look at these two, the stained ivory is just browner and yellower. So we're like, all right, so I need to take this creamy ivory and add a bit of a yellowy brown. My guess is going to be that rich leather is going to be our friend. 2, 3, 4. I always start out with 4 drops and try a 4-to-1. It's just kind of something I do. If you do that, it can help you remember your mixes. If you do something like I always do a 5-to-1 to start out, or I always do a 4-to-1 to start out, or I always do a 4-to-2. If you get in that habit when you're mixing highlights or trying to create colors, then you almost always can recreate what you do, because you'll be like, well, I know I use these 2 colors, or I use something like them, and you just do a quick 4-to-1, and you're like, oh yeah, it's close enough. So I'm going to use 1 drop of rich leather, 9429, because it is a brownish yellow. See the yellow in it? It's very evident, right? When you get up close, you can see the yellowish tone, but it also has brown. So we're going to try it, and of course it wants to clog, because it's just that kind of Friday. Is that kind of Friday? Thank you for the cheer, Wotan's Curse. I really like, I'm happy that you like her. I think she's an interesting model because she's so complicated. Her costume is so complicated. So I'm having to work a lot harder to figure out put together my color scheme. So I've got a 4-to-1 creamy ivory to rich leather. I'm going to drop 2 drops. And this is something else that I do habitually. It's 4-to-1 and 2 drops of water. And so it pretty much just, I'm building up habits, the way that I mix things. Oh, that's almost perfect. Ha 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 ha. I'm laughing here. All right, so this is almost perfect. Now this happens when you've been mixing paint for 15 years. But, okay, so that's the color I've mixed. I made to make it a little darker probably, but let's put a drop of stained ivory next to it. I start with a darker cream because I want to shade up. All right, so I do need to go 1 more drop of rich leather. But I'm really close. You guys can see how close I am. Let's put a drop of creamy ivory next to it to show you. So what I started with is that. And now what I'm working toward is the darker one. Ah! One more drop. So now we'll be 4-2, which is an easy ratio. It's a 2-1. And that is going to be a little bit more yellow than the traditional stained ivory, but really, really close enough, guys. Really close enough. In fact, I like that it's a little more golden. That's interesting, and it's a little less muted. So there we go. 2-1, creamy ivory to rich leather. Ta-da! Which is also in the PDF. I'm just going to keep mentioning this Patreon PDF all freaking day because we're working with these browns. My Patreon is patreon.com/paintingbig. If you like this and you're interested in how to use these Bones Browns and how to mix a lot of canceled colors from the Bones Browns, go and check it out. Is the $5 level will be what it's at. That's actually, if you're interested in Master Series Paint, if you like the line, that's the level for you. Because I talk a lot about color mixing, color theory, what goes into those colors, what they work with, you know, all sorts of stuff. So let's see if this is dark enough. Both light enough and dark enough. For one thing, it needs to be light enough to stand out as an edging. But it needs to be dark enough to actually have color and not look like an off-white when I put it down because I need to highlight it. So it does need to have some depth. When you're doing like a cream or a white, your shadows still need to be there. You don't want to go too light with your base color or I tend to start with my darkest color and work up when I'm working with cream and white. So, all right, we're going to pop this up here. Then now you see where the collar would have come right down by her hair. I think that strand of hair there is actually kind of in the way of everything. Yeah, it kind of is. Well, we'll just paint that all like hair then. Oh, yeah, if you are, then you'll get this PDF when I put it out. You are good. Which hopefully will be later today. Now I'm thinking here, I'm like, this is a nice color, and I think I'm going to like it, and I think it'll work. I am debating now, though, over whether I should just do all the edging in the cream. I definitely want this cuff to be cream. The inner side of the coat. I'm just gonna put it on. But I think I do need something to shade this just a little bit more. And I'm debating between doing the rich leather, which is what I used to build this color, and doing like saddle brown, which, you know, of course we're already using. I could probably get away with either. Using a saddle is gonna make it more reddish. And using rich leather is gonna make it more yellowy brown. I could also try using my walnut, but it's probably going to go a little green because the problem with walnut with yellowy colors is that yellow plus black make green. But you see how I'm kind of moving and I'm blocking in major areas on the model. And wherever I can, I'm going to try to repeat colors. So what I really have to ask myself now is how much gold trim do I want? The jacket actually doesn't have any gold trim. It's all going to be cream here. She will have gold on her epaulette here. And she'll have gold up here in a spot. She'll have gold or silver buckles, probably silver. She's going to have some brass, so a goldish color on her gun. She'll have buckles down here. She does have edging on her shirt here, so that probably will go gold. And the furnishings on the dagger could go silver or gold. So we just have little spots of metal here and there. I think... And actually the shoulder pad balances out. My question is whether I need to go gold with the edging on the hat. I'm still thinking I don't. I'm still thinking I want these little ribbons to be white or cream. I might put a color in there, but we'll see. And then I think I want her hat feather to be cream as well, at least to start with. I want a white plume. So yeah, so blocking in what we want. And then we'll make, that probably means my edging on the hat will go gold. That way the edging on the hat and the epaulette there and the gun furnishings and maybe some touches of this metal will end up being gold. Again, you want to repeat stuff around the model. You don't want to use any color, especially not a shiny or bold color, in only one place. There we go. Getting that feather figured out. So now we've got those light colors and they're repeating themselves over the course of the figure. We got that. And then when I come in here with this legging and I also make that cream, so we're coming out with a very monochromatic color scheme in the end, which is weird because we started so colorful. But because we started so colorful, we've had to be a little bit timid, not timid, but cautious about what else we put on the model. The problem with using interesting colors is that sometimes you can very easily paint yourself into a color corner. So if you're going to use something like Icy Violet, you need to kind of consider what's going to go with it and always lean heavily on your neutrals. Don't be afraid to lean heavily on your neutrals. Just because a model has a lot of neutral colors on it doesn't mean it can't be gorgeous. I tend to very much depend on my neutrals because I want harmonious color schemes. And I also love that I can, if I'm going with a mid-tone color like the violet and eldritch mix, and I need light and dark in order to get more contrast on my model, I can get both light and dark with neutrals and not have to worry about messing up my color scheme. Oh, yeah. You've got everything if you're a $15 tier backer. That gets you the paint along, too. Yes, I have a lot to do before the end of this month. But the paint along should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I have some ideas for things that'll be fun to try on that. You'll all end up cursing me, I'm pretty sure. This is the problem with getting a bigger model. With choosing that 75mm model for our paint along. That means we can do all sorts of things we can't do on 28. Gonna just get the upper part of this cuff. Just want the upper edge. You can leave you want to leave that kind of black shadow between the purple and the edge, but you do want to get a little bit of that edge to be this color. You don't want to leave just a big black blob there. There we go. It's a little better. Yeah. All right. Val, you know your main commandment. This includes like waiting on the paint along. If there are things, okay, let me say that straight out, like guys, like I should say this anyway in my paint along tier. If you feel like at any point that something is just way out of your skill range, you are within your rights not to do it on the paint along. You can hold off and try it later when you feel more confident. But do not allow fear to rule you. Allow a common reasoning. Like, there's a point where you're like, wow, I'm barely more than a beginning painter, and Anne is trying to show us how to do freckles on this model. I don't think I can do this. So there are two things you can do if you're a beginning painter. One, you can just say, okay, I'm going to wait because this is scary and I don't even understand paint consistency yet. Or you can maybe try it on like a piece of paper. Like you can, paint down a layer of skin tone, and then you could try to do the steps that I'm doing and see if they work. And if they work, then you could try them on your model. Worst case scenario, if you screw up, you can always just paint over it. If you try to do some freehand that I'm doing and it isn't working for you, just, back off, either simplify it. It's kind of like when you take a yoga class, when you haven't taken yoga before, and they're like, okay, we don't expect you to do the crazy stings. We expect you to just do the stretches in a manner that makes sense for you, that isn't going to hurt you, right? So think about miniature painting and Anne's paint along tier as yoga. You can't let fear drive you, though. You have to let yourself do things. You have to let yourself fail, or you never learn. You never get better. That is the price that fear exacts. If you want to be your best you gotta kick fear to the curb and just try stuff sometimes. Especially, it's not like, failing at mini painting or painting one model poorly is going to fail you in life. Oh, I missed a purple. I missed a purple part. It's a good thing I mixed up some purple. Right there, do you see on the collar? That should be purple. Right next to the hair. I can't let fear drive you. It doesn't have a license and is probably impaired. You are correct. Exactly. So, I mean, try stuff. Try stuff. But don't, like, go crazy overthinking it and, like, just try it. And if you fail at it, and it's like, just kind of try to analyze. It's like the guy who did the how to learn anything in 20 hours. How to learn to be good at anything in 20 hours. He is absolutely valid. But part of his process is to learn enough to troubleshoot. So if you fail, your task is no longer to execute that particular thing. Your task is to figure out why it didn't work. If you can do that, you are so much further toward becoming an awesome miniature painter. Because learning to troubleshoot what isn't working is so very important to becoming good at anything. It's the intermediate stage. It's that, your eye is better than your hand. So use that. Use that to figure out what you need to make it better. Yes, he has a TED Talk too. I just watched the TED Talk. And I noted down his process. Which makes complete sense to me. So I quote him a lot. Somebody on here was nice enough to point out that his TED Talk to me. Because it does not take too long. Because I've always been kind of inclined to question the whole 10,000 hours thing. Like, it works in some ways. Like, my writing, I almost certainly have put in, I don't even want to, I've been writing since I was a kid. So I may have hit 10,000 hours to become a good writer. And I think if you're trying to become a professional at something, and a top level professional at something artistic, that maybe 10,000 hours is something to look at. But I think that you can become very good at something without near that amount of craziness. And I see miniature painters do it all the time. Yeah, Josh Kaufman, that's him. I actually like using like Rosy Skin, and Rosy Skin Shadow is actually a really good one to start with. Do I have it in my thing? No, I don't. But the shadow color for Rosy Skin, if you have like the corset, John David is much raw red. It's ruddy. And that's a really good base for dwarves because they tend to have those pink noses and, and their skin's a little darker. So then I would take the Rosy Skin Shadow. I'd start with that and I'd highlight it with Rosy Skin, but I'd maybe leave the pink around the nose. Yeah, 10,000 hours to become an outlier, which if you're trying to be a top grade professional at an art form, seems reasonable. Like if you're trying to be one of the best in the world. At this point, I've been painting miniatures. Oh gosh, it's been a long time. I probably hit 10,000 hours. I would have to go back and kind of look at, but well, you need to you need to pull the Tara out in primer for sure because I'm about to start working on her Val for the paint along. So you need to have your prep done. We're about to prime. And start. We're going to start with skin tones because she's got a lot of it. And there's going to be a lot of blending on this because she's big. So yeah, be ready. Be ready, everybody. So just like with every other color, if I take a little bit of my walnut brown and mix it into my creamy color, it can tend to go a little green, but if I only use a little bit, there's enough brown. I introduced enough brown with the rich leather to get an okay shadow color. So I can use that color. I need it to be a little bit darker though. Trying to tie together all this area in here. Kind of have to flood it. Then I'm going to have to come back in. Because her hair comes there and gets in the way up on there. So hold on. Yeah. Yeah, pretty sure I have hit 10,000 hours in both writing and painting at this point. The two things that I always wanted to make a living doing. So, ta-da! We'll see if I'm any good. December 1st, guys, I start sending out the novel. December 1st, I have to sit down and conquer my own fear and send out my first query letter to the agent that I want more than anything in the world. Oh, okay. She's like, it's not a deal breaker if I don't get her, but she is the agent that I think is the best for my book, so. So it's now high stakes. If I fail here, well, then I've gotten rejected by the best. And then I've got, the other 100 agents to submit to. It'll be in the $15 tier. So if you scroll down the stuff that you've unlocked, John David, you'll get to it. It's always at the end of the month. So it's usually on the last day or the second to last day of the month that I put up the Patreon. So if you just look for the post that was on the 30th or 31st of last month, you'll find it. The first one is just prepping on Tara. So if you 3D printed her, then you don't need to worry about a lot of that. But I had to cover it for the people who didn't 3D print her. 3D printing people have their own set of prep, although D. Clearman said it was very similar. So in a lot of ways, use the same tools. All right, there we go. Got a bit of that together. This is a little bit weird because her collar actually doesn't hook up to her coat the same way it does back there. It's weird. It's weird. So that part of the sculpt, and sometimes that does go awry with really complicated concept art. Sometimes the sculptor will sculpt something and it won't quite make sense. Just paint it as best you can. And there's also there's a border along the top of that, and there shouldn't be one. Yeah, exactly. If you want to be good at painting, you start dumping hours into it. That's honestly it, and do it thoughtfully. Just with the Josh Kaufman thing. I mean, he's absolutely right, and it's thoughtful, focused practice that makes the difference. So I'm going to ignore a sculpting feature here because it really should just go up. There was no top border on the cuff or on the collar on this side, but there is on this side. I think it was probably just a misinterpretation of a line. So I'm just going to paint over it. But yeah, it's just, it's not even dumping a lot of hours in. It's just paying attention. It's you can paint and just throw paint onto something and you'll stay kind of at the same level for a long time. Or you can paint and try to troubleshoot yourself and figure out what's working, and try things. And then you'll get good in a very short period of time. I mean, there have been a couple of people on my Patreon who have just really leveled up in a very short period of time. And I mean, they're doing it because they are, they're applying lessons and they're trying to troubleshoot their work and they're asking for feedback and trying to fix stuff. And, and it's not unpleasant. It's not like work to learn. I think a lot of times our culture maybe sets us up to feel like, oh, you're going to have to work at that, and work is unpleasant, right? Nobody wants to work. But with mini painting, the work is joy, right? You're sitting and you're painting tiny people and monsters and stuff. What is not to like about this? I don't get it. So you should never think that getting good at miniature painting means you're going to stop liking miniature painting. If anything, you should like miniature painting even more then, because you'll be better at it. And you'll love the stuff that you're producing, right? You'll take real pleasure in what you're painting, and you'll be proud of it, and that's cool. That's the way it should be. So yeah, it puzzles me when work gets such a negative connotation sometimes in our culture. There we go. Oh, I think nobody has work-life balance. I was talking to an artist the other day, and they were like, "There is no work-life balance. It's a myth. Nobody's good at it. Everybody tries to be better at it. Nobody's good at it." I think whenever you try to get that work-life balance, you end up feeling mildly guilty for something. You either feel guilty because you're not working on your art enough. That's what your brain's telling you, right? For better, for right or for wrong. Or you feel bad because you're not spending enough time with your family. Again, your idea of that, maybe not their idea of that. or you're not spending enough time with your dog, or you're not spending enough time just relaxing. Like that can get insidious. The workaholic thing, which I tend to be prone to. 52 years in the same job, still love doing it. Fantastic. That's the best. And so many people don't have that. Or maybe they just like, maybe they feel they shouldn't have it. I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed my job at Reaper. It was great, but I definitely had gotten to the point where I welcomed this change. Plus, I'd always wanted to go back and try. I tried to freelance years ago, but I was young and stupid and did badly at it. So I always wanted to try making my living as an artist. The fact that I'm doing better and better at it and getting closer and closer to like the level that I want to be at, just makes me super happy. So even though I loved working at Reaper for 17 years, I'm glad that I set out and did this and decided to move out and be with David and try to be a freelance artist and writer soon. Because as I was telling David, it'll be monetized one way or another. Either somebody will pick me up, or I'll self publish it. I'll indie publish it after everybody has said no. Alrighty. We're getting better, and we're getting a lot blocked in now. See what we got going on now. I like this cream, actually. We need to get some gold blocked in. I usually don't, Val. I find that super glue is going to glue resin together whether you have a little bit of primer on there or not. That said, if you want to, and I may do this, I will often use sticky tack to just stick the limbs on, do the prime, and then take them apart. Sticky tack, poster putty, silly putty, whatever will get them to stick on temporarily. Then take them off and do whatever. That's why I don't typically mask. If I need to, I can always take my knife and scrape away some of the primer and get enough surface for the glue to stick to. I really don't find that it's a problem, especially not with a model that fits together as well as that one does. So yeah. Thanks, PM. I've been a writer for a very long time, and I've wanted to be published since I was a little kid. So this is it. Forcing myself finally to get down to it. To brass tacks. I'm looking forward to it. I'm even looking forward to the rejections, because at least I'm trying. At least I'm not sitting here whining about, not having my book done. If I never submit, I will never know. So I like to know. That's my new thing. I don't want to get to be like 60 or 70 or whatever and never have gotten uncowardly enough to submit my book. Oh yeah, baking soda trick, Aristel. Yep, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I went to a high-end workshop. I got accepted to Viable Paradise out in Martha's Vineyard. And that was a great experience. If anybody out there is a aspiring science fiction or fantasy writer, I would highly, if VP is still going on, I would highly recommend VP. Viable Paradise. One of my fellow students at that workshop was nominated for a Nebula Award for a short story he wrote a couple years after we got out. And another one is a successful novelist, I believe, now. I would need to look her up. Oh, Clarion, yeah. Super awesome. Yep. Yeah, fantasy book series. Young adult fantasy. So the first two books are a series that's just one story, just because the story was too long to tell with one book. And then every book after it'll be kind of a standalone, but set in the same world. Kind of like Redwall. Although sometimes, more than Redwall, sometimes characters will make repeat appearances. Especially when you've got characters like the North Wind, who's pretty much eternal. So you pretty much know that you can count on some of those characters to show up from book to book, even if you're crossing generations. Oh, Cory Doctorow. Yeah. Yeah, there's some serious cred there. Yeah. Corey's great. He's a good writer. Actually, I had been lax in picking up a Cory Doctorow book, but David is a big fan, and so I read Makers and really liked it. So his style reminds me a little bit of William Gibson, who I also really like. The way he writes, just as the way he does characters. Yeah, I went. My teachers at Viable Paradise were Patrick and Teresa Nielsen Hayden. Of course, Patrick is Tor's chief editor, Tor Books, and John Scalzi, writer, and Stephen Gould, president of Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America that year, I think, who's worked with people like Ron Howard for screenplays. So it was a pretty awesome workshop. It wasn't 6 weeks. My problem with Clarion was always that it was so long. And I worked, right? I worked full time. There was no way I could take 6 weeks off. Like, I could do it now. But now I feel like I'm ahead and I don't necessarily need Clarion. I don't know. If everybody turns down my book, then maybe I'll rethink it and apply to Clarion one year. Yeah. Nancy Kress is. I loved Nancy Kress when I was a teenager. Yeah, Harlan Ellison. Yep. Damon Knight. Yeah. Those are all great writers. I was kind of sad because I know Neil Gaiman has taught a Clarion, and George R. R. Martin, who I work for, who I paint for, he also has taught one. But the big name writers like that tend to teach 1 year and then their lives get so busy again that they can't. So I'm sure Clarion does. Does Clarion have repeat instructors? Like, do they have instructors that just love it so much they come back year after year? Just doing some highlighting, guys, here. I'm adding pure white to the icy violet. See my pretty color that I made? Look, there's my pure white. There's my icy violet. There's my awesome, pretty pale lavender. Isn't it beautiful? Like, there's a princess dress somewhere out there that needs to be that color. Or an ice queen. You're hoarding your doubloons. Ah, yeah. Okay. And Nancy Kress was frequent. This I thought. It makes sense. Some writers, it's just like with painters, right? Some painters like really get into teaching, and some just teach a couple times, and then they just are like, well, yeah, I'd rather be painting. That's fair. Everybody's different. Some people, like, I'm one of those people where once I learn something, I just itch to teach it to other people. Like, that's honestly how I roll. Like, the minute I learn a thing, I think about how I would teach it. Like, I would start thinking about that. So I don't know how I ended up geared to be, like, hardwired to be a teacher, because I always told my mom I didn't want to be one. But then again, I was coming from high school at the time, and, you know, anybody's experience in high school would teach you not to be a teacher. Yeah. It is cool, though, isn't it? Right? Like, you just have a different mindset. You think about a lot about how to translate things to people, right? How to break them down. If I do get to be a published writer, you know I'm going to end up teaching at some point, if anybody will have me. There we go. So a little bit of highlight up there on the top of the shirt. I maybe lost a little bit of my midtone. That's a common problem when you're working with such small areas. It's very easy to lose your midtone. So you want to make sure that you don't lose your midtone and your shadow. A lot of painters will lose the midtone. They'll keep the shadow, they'll keep the highlight, but then their midtone will disappear. And so what will happen is they'll lose that icy violet color. It'll translate out because you need at least 50% of your surface to be icy violet for it to look icy violet. So you always got to correct yourself there. If you get really enthusiastic with your highlighting and your shading, don't lose track of what your actual color is. This is a common thing that happens when people are painting red. Oh yeah, Madison. You know I went to school there, right? I lived in Madison for a decade. David taught in Madison, and his mom was, I think, the daughter of one of the music teachers there. Which is funny because David is not into music. It's like that thing where your parent is really into something and you aren't. There we go. Now I've got some nice highlights on there. I still need to figure out this little cuff. I think it's probably leather. Probably just to protect her arm from smoke and flash. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I liked Madtown a lot. I still do. It's just cold. Like, I'm so glad not to be in the cold weather anymore. I'm such a wimp when it comes to cold. The minute it gets like below 60 degrees, I start like whimpering and putting on extra layers. And cringing when I have to walk out the door. So I'm going to do that dark brown. Oh, genetics. Nice. That's my other hobby. Dog genetics. Local biotech. Neat. Very cool. Very cool. That's interesting. You and I have like similar, very similar interest groups then. That's really funny. I've always been interested in genetics. I took a basic genetics class when I was in college just because I could take anything as an elective pretty much as an art student. But I never got into it. In retrospect, I wish I had. Genetics is such a kind of a hot industry now. But I know if I went back to school to get, you know, more learning on genetics, it would probably eat me. I've got so many things I learn and want to learn as it is. Yeah, but it would have been slightly earlier than that, PM. I was in college from 90 to 94. I think the genetics class was 92. I was just taking classes for electives that interested me, that like I would love to have a job in, but that like I thought was like impractical for a job. Yeah, such speaks the art student. But I thought I was going to go into advertising, which of course totally didn't work. But yeah, so I was taking a lot of archaeology, philosophy, genetics, biology, writing, English literature. I was taking a lot of interesting electives. How about that? So I got to get my brown hair mocked in there, guys. Haha, that's funny. Oh, that's right. Wait a minute. We've got a sash. She's got a sash that comes down. Oh dear, what color will we make that? And does it go anywhere else? I think it's just a sash that's hooked over her belt. Let me just look. No, the belt is definitely leather because we've got a buckle. I don't see anywhere else that the sash is going. It looks like she's just got it tucked into her belt. So, all right, obviously, where we're going here is we're going Icy Violet. Oh, my Icy Violet has gotten very thin because I was using it to kind of shade and blend. So that's my blending and shading consistency. Let's go and add some more paint to our Icy Violet. Oh my gosh, we're already at like quarter after. I probably need to stop. But I lost a lot of hours with Kiri, so I don't mind going over a bit. Still, Justin must be busy or he would have noticed that we've been...
Well, I'm kind of letting you do your thing.
Kind of let me do my thing, yeah. So, okay, the sash does go and loop over the belt, it looks like, and then comes down under it. So we're just going to block that in and with a thin layer, and I'll just solidify this Icy Violet layer later. And maybe we'll do some cream freehand on it. That could be fun. Freehand doesn't have to be big and bold. It can be more subtle, so... All right. That'll just essentially remind me that this is the color I want to make this. And then I can fill it in when I remix. Same with over here. There. Now I will know. Like, looking at it, we could go cream with it, too. I'm going to consider... It's going to have cream on it no matter what, like if we do freehand. So the only question is if I'm going to get that Icy Violet back here and do that. I could also go Icy Violet with the scabbard, but I think I'm going leather. We'll have to think about that one, guys. No, because the sword scabbard has its own little belt piece. See it? There it is. There's the hanger for the sword scabbard. I think it's just decorative. Izzy tends to do that if she wants an extra kind of... Again, she likes asymmetrical effects. So you can see that this model's actually on a diagonal. See, you've got the hat on that side. And her action, this arm goes straight down past the face. And it's definitely like meant to be an important part. And then you've got, at the bottom, you've got this little sash coming out. So you definitely have a model that's built on a diagonal line. You see that? That's artistic design. A diagonal is always more exciting and visually interesting than a straight up, squared off figure. I don't know. I wouldn't. The thing is that we only have one vibrant color. Like we've got our purple, and I'm not going to go that because the coat's already that. So it's got to be either icy violet or cream. At this point, we are way too late to introduce a spot color. And if we did introduce a spot color, it could not be this big. Anything this large is more than a spot highlight, a spot color, or a spot accent color, as we call it. We could do a small accent color somewhere else of a different kind if I found something that I liked. Maybe an orange. I don't know. We have to be careful because we're working on that. We're going to have gold as it is, and that's going to go kind of a yellowy, orangey brown. So that's going to be an accent color. Because when you do gold NMM, guys, it actually counts as a color. It's not a neutral. It counts as a yellow or yellow-orange. Yeah, exactly. So this is... if I do it decorative, what I'll do, P. Mandrakar, is I will do freehand on it. Like, I'll do a fancy freehand design and make it decorative that way. So I'll have to think about what I want to do and figure it out. And figure out a simple freehand that we could do on it. But yeah, so that's Izzy's got a clever design. We got a lot done today, guys. We blocked in a lot. I do like that leather brown still. I'm probably going to use it for this belt here and the cross ties there. Kiri's a little restless, so maybe I should be putting an end to our session for the day. So I'll make sure I get some extra brown on this hair. So I hope you all have had fun. This has been an interesting one. You can tell I got sleep last night. Let's see, and there's a little bit of hair coming down there. Okay. What do we have to raid? Who do we have to raid?
Let's see here.
Yeah, no problem, P. Mandrakar. Yeah, and I would ask myself if the model would be what she would be wearing. But at the same time, when I'm this close to the end, you have to be very careful about adding in another color. You have to make sure, especially when it's this large, if you do anything bright here, you almost have to balance it by changing the color up here. Because otherwise, you look at this and all everybody's going to see. If I made this like a bright orange or something, you might look here first, but your eyes would go right to that. And that's not important. You don't want that to draw the eye. So you got to ask yourself again, what's important on the figure? And this line is important, but you don't want people looking down here at this sash first. They should be looking at the important part of the figure. So you gotta direct the eye.
I think we're going to be rating Mike Disney.
Oh, Mike Disney, yay! We haven't rated him for ages. Okay, guys, I want you all to have a great weekend. Stay tuned for some Patreon posts this weekend, and I will see you again on Monday. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you guys very much. Don't forget today we have 3 o'clock. We have Reaperland, and as far as I know, Bones 5 live update is still supposed to happen. So if that changes, I'll let you guys know. But thank you guys very much.